Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me for another spirit review video. Now today we're going to be taking a look at two bourbons, both coming from the same distillery, which is MGP, Indiana Bourbons, one being relatively young, the other being very old. Now as you can tell by this bottle, I do not have the original bottle because I did a bottle split with a friend, because this is the Rebecca Creek 16-year-old. The Rebecca Creek 16-year-old was $250 retail, and this one was from barrel number 12. It was only 104 proof, and at that proof and that price point, I was not going to pull the trigger on it. I was close, but I wasn't going to do it because again, I self-purchase all my bottles. So I was like, see if he wanted to split it. He did. We split it. I let him keep the bottle, and I'll show a picture of it when we get to that. So, but we're going to review them both so that we can see what a young MGP at cask strength is like, followed by a much more mature MGP at, again, cask strength, 104 for this one, and see how they differ, okay? Now, let's talk about the 9-banded. When I was in a Total Wine recently, I got to meet the owner, and he was there tasting a lot of the spirits, and so I tasted the lineup. Really like the cask strength version. It is 115 proof. Price point is nice at only about $55. It is a wheated bourbon. So, and of course, to be bourbon, you only have to be 51% or more corn. This one is right on that line for that mash bill. 51% corn, 45% wheat, 4% barley. Now, for the 16-year-old Rebecca Creek, this is, again, 16-year-old MGP. I'm not positive on the mash bill here. It could be the low rye, 21% rye. It could be the high rye at 36% rye. Not sure, but maybe when we taste it, we can figure all that out. Okay. But for $55, 9-banded, woo, for the homies. 9-banded. All right. Wow. Nice nose. I would guess just by going by the nose, because again, when I'm working with Saints Alley, doing my blends, I nose a lot of MGP. I nose them when they're fresh coming in, I've nosed them anywhere from pretty much new make, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, so on, 6 years, 7 year. And of course, with the bottles in my collection, I have experience all the way up to, oh man, some old MGPs, some phenomenal 12-year, which I'll be reviewing for my patrons at the end, but talk about that in a little bit. I will say this one noses like it's a very, very solid 5 to 6 year would be my guess. And these are good barrels. It's a good combination because on the nose, I pick up that really soft, sweet wheat. I even pick up, now that it's opened up, I'm starting to get a little shaved coconut, but there's a lot of brown sugar tone to start with. Brown sugar, a little hint. There's good cinnamon, but it's baking spice cinnamon. But I was also picking up a nuttiness. There's a little nuttiness going on in here. It's not super bright on the peanut. Matter of fact, it actually kind of noses like those candied peanuts, those Boston baked beans type things. Yeah, little darker cherry, sour, a little bit of that plum, but it's kind of soured a little bit because it has this like that polish tone that they start to develop when they're starting to get really nice and mature. They start getting this little apple cider vinegar, just like, again, just a drop, where you kind of, you nose it, but it's not out of whack. It's not throwing anything off. It almost starts going into that wood polish tone. I wouldn't call this one super complex, but very enjoyable. It's a nice nose. It's got the fruit, it's got the spice, it's got the oak, it's got that little polished tone. All right, a little bit of that nuttiness. Let's go ahead and taste it. 115 proof. Wow. That's nice. That's really nice. It actually hides the fruit on the nose. There is a bright, not bright, I'm not call it bright. It's not like maraschino cherry, but it is a fresh ripe cherry tone to this one. A little bit of a bananas Foster thing going on as well. Brown sugar, caramelized banana type thing. Yeah, that cherry's definitely right there. As soon as you get past that bananas Foster, then it's like baking spices are just perfectly balanced up top. They don't get too hot on the cinnamon. A little touch of clove in there. A little touch of anise, very minute, not super big, or anise, however you like to say it. On the back end, you start getting that shaved coconut, that nice oak. Matter of fact, when I take air in and I slowly breathe out the nose, it is very reminiscent of a very mature bourbon. So it's like it has that coconut and oak character of bourbon that's probably like 8-year-old, 9-year-old MGP. But that bananas Foster and that cherry leads me to believe it's younger. It just has some really nice, good characteristics going on. Oh, very nice. Yeah, you do get the really nice combination of that plum, cherry, bananas Foster again. That little nuttiness that's in there. It's not, again, Boston baked beans. I think that's the best descriptor for it. Oak leather, a little bit of orange oil. Just a tiny bit, not a lot. And man, really nice. For $55, that's a nice pickup. I would not have a problem with picking that up again. Now, MGP distillate, different mash bill. Again, this was 51% corn, 45% wheat, 4% barley. This, again, could be low rye, could be high rye, bourbon mash bill. But I don't believe this is a wheated bourbon. No, this is a rye bourbon. Let's see. I will say on the nose for this Rebecca Creek, and they did different proofs, different barrels. Some are really high proof. I hear they're fantastic. I haven't had those. I've only ever been able to find this one. Again, retail pricing was $250. I think I found this one actually for $225. But on the nose, it is brown sugar, almost molasses. Yeah, a combination of those two. There's almost, yeah, there's almost a rumminess to it, like a, not talking sweet, sugary rums. I'm talking pure rums where they're just big and dense character. And this has that. I would call it on the fruit a little bit of like, because I get a lot of apple cider vinegar in this one. Again, that polish tone just ramps up the longer MGP ages. So I get that. Again, kind of like a, I would call this one brandied cherries, baked apples. When I get to that edge of the glass, I pick up a lot of anise, a little bit of that licorice tone. Let me check the top of the glass. Not much up top. Just a little bit of that vinegar. Yeah, kind of like cherry and plum is pretty much it. Baked apples for the fruit. But lots of oak, lots of old leather. Orange oil and clove is in this one. That clove is a theme with old MGP. You get a bit of that rye kind of spice characteristic still, even though it's 16 years old, you'd think all that would mellow out. But that's what makes me think this is a rye bourbon because I still pick up that vibrancy of that rye spice. It's not floral per se, it's just a little zing, still a little life still left in this one. Okay, let's taste it. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really good. You don't get, again, this old bourbon characteristic. It's just a thing of the past. It's hard to find stuff like this anymore. You know, the old OKIs, as I showed earlier, with this one right here. You know, they used to bottle 12-year-old MGP. So did Old Scout, you know. They were just bottling and it was just sitting around everywhere. You know, you get 12-year-old MGP, it was no big deal. 16-year-old MGP like this. You know, we used to see that a little bit in the Magnus blends. The cigar blend especially had some old um, Indiana bourbon in it. And you get that, speaking of cigar, tobacco characteristic. When they start getting old, they start getting really cocoa, tobacco, leather heavy. The oak hopefully remains sweet, which it has here. But let's go ahead and run it from the very beginning. Oh, yeah, that brown sugar molasses thing right up front. Cola aspect to it. Oh, salivating. Cola aspect, almost like a little RC cola characteristic going on. Big, what is that right there? Dark chocolate kind of arrives kind of early. You get a little bit of that apple cider vinegar in there, but there's so much other bigger, heavier aspects to it. That big dark chocolate tone, mild cinnamon, leather, a little bit of coconut. I think there's actually more coconut on this one, but this has that depth to go along with it. The cola's still riding, the leather, the oak, almost like a little bit of like an amaretto type character going on. So it's like almonds, but these are like a sweet almond liqueur, just a touch in there. Very dense brown sugar, bookish character. When they talk about dusty bourbons, they have this old kind of like dusty book aromatic, sometimes flavor to them. Sometimes they'll get a little bit of that machine oil. This has just a touch of that machine oil. Some people are like, machine oil? Isn't that whiskey? The old ones had it. It was sometimes some people will talk about like it almost like a what a toolbox smells like, right? That kind of comes through. Came through a lot on some dusty turkeys at times. This one has a little bit of that, but it's just an old bourbon characteristic. They've kind of modernized away from that profile. Now we're getting a lot of citrus forward, caramel driven, bright cherry bourbons, but old bourbons, they weren't like that. They were very dense, heavy, weighty feeling. This has that orange oil on it, but it's coming on the back end, clove heavy again, still lingering on the back end. Still chewing on that kind of coconut aspect is great. Of the two, I mean, come on. You got to go with 16-year-old MGP. You can't compare the two though. But what I'm here to kind of show you is this 9-banded wheated bourbon is fantastic, and it's out there for $55 right now. I wouldn't hesitate. Buy it. When you first crack it, drink it past the shoulder or share with friends to get it past the shoulder, and then let it sit there for about a month, and then go back at it, and you'll see how it's developed in the bottle. The Rebecca Creek 16, if you see it out there, go ahead and grab it. I think it's 250. It's a rare experience nowadays. So if you don't have anything like that in your collection or in your bar and you really want something that's super dense, it's great and it's worth it, in my opinion. Of course, what I'm about to review for my patrons over at patreon.com/LiquorHound is the very best MGP I've ever had in my entire life. And I've tasted a lot of MGP at all ages again. I mean, you think batch one of Cigar Blend was good? Come on, this is going to annihilate batch one of the Cigar Blend. This was actually a 12-year-old OKI selected by my phenomenal friends. They have since passed, God rest their soul, Ricky and Julie Mungle. They were bourbon royalty, and that is exactly how they were described to me when I first met them by a friend of them, a friend of ours, I should say, that introduced us, and they were definitely that. They had a beautiful collection down in the basement of their home. They were very gracious. I mean, fantastic family. I'd go up there and they'd cook for you and they would share their collection with you. And of course, I'm bringing bottles up there to share with them. But Ricky and Julie were part of this bluegrass bourbon group. And they did this pick of an OKI. I also did another one. I believe that one was called Songbird. And it was beautiful. And I remember tasting those two side by side. And I was like, he's like, what do you think? And I was like, Ricky, these are the best. Like, this is the best MGP I've ever had. And he's like, you're just saying that. I said, no, no, no. I'm being serious. How can I get a bottle? And so he was gracious enough to donate a bottle. And yeah, so we're going to review that next. And let me tell you, this barrel at 12 years old, low fill. So it evaporated so much out of that barrel because there was only 72 bottles that came out of that at 116, I think, 0.8 proof. I don't have my glasses, but they're right around there. But if you can join us over at patreon.com/LiquorHound, you're going to help keep this channel alive because as you can see, I have to self-purchase these bottles, but that's what keeps the integrity up. That's what helps me and you have my trust in knowing that I'm not, you know, corporate sponsored or anything. And I'm out there actually doing the work just like you would, but I'm hopefully helping you make smart purchases. And that's the whole point of my LiquorHound channel. So thank you, each and every one of you. Join me over at Patreon if you can. If not, don't worry about it. I greatly appreciate each and every one of my viewers here on YouTube. Keep leaving all those great comments. I'll get to them just as soon as I can. Everyone have a great day and cheers.